Lecture 6 Economic Growth. Before we go to Lecture 6, please recall what you have studied in previous section. In Lecture 2, we introduced the data of economy including GDP, CPI, and unemployment. So after introduce the economy with the data, we analyze the three important aspects in the economy. That is, the money system, the financial system, and the open economy. So now, we go to explain the changes in the economy described by GDP firstly. The changes in the economy may be shown in this diagram. GDP changes over time. But in general, we can see the long-run trend for GDP like this, and this is called economic growth. So now we will go to long-run growth of the economy. And after understand the long-run growth of GDP, we will look at the marked years. In these years, GDP reduced and the economy fall into recessions. So the changes in the economy in recession is called short-run fluctuation. And the short-run fluctuation will be explained in Lecture 7 after we finish the long-run growth. So now go to the main content of this lecture. First of all, please read and find the information about the economic growth around the world. You may search from internet to find this. It may be seen from the GDP or the GDP per capita. And it seems that Japan used to be a very famous miracle in terms of growth. And recently, China, Korea become the miracle in terms of growth. So now we go to explain what is economic growth and what are the determinants of growth. In fact, the definition of growth is introduced in GDP section. When you compute real GDP for many years and GDP increased is the economic growth. So the general definition for economic growth is that economic growth is the increase in real output over time. The real output is measured by real GDP. So economic growth rate is also be the growth rate of real GDP. It equals changes between GDP in 2 continuous years in percentage unit. Another way to measure growth is the growth of productivity. Productivity is GDP per labor or number of goods and services produced by one worker. So we will take real GDP divided by the labor force. The increase in productivity is more important because when you have the increase of real GDP, but the increase in GDP may be lower than the increase in population. So it will lead to the reduction in living standard. So if you want to have higher living standard, we need to have higher productivity. So the growth of productivity is more important than the growth of total output. But in this section, we will focus on the first definition, and then you will find more explanation for the second definition in other lecture. To see the importance of growth, you may see that growth the growth rate seems to be very small. For example, in this table, we can see that the growth rate may be 2% or 1% or even lower than 1%. But if the growth is cumulated over time, so it will make the growth or the increase more and more, higher and higher. So this is called double growth. So if we have the continuous growth for many years, so the increase in GDP will be higher and higher, and even increased by 100% compared to many years before that. So now we have a rule, the rule of 70, to give you a short way to compute the time needed to have double value of GDP. The rule of 70 states that if GDP grows by G% per year, it will get double value after 70 per G years. So it means that if we have the growth rate of GDP of 7%, G is 7% per year. So GDP will be double after 10 years. Or another example may be if you have an investment, $5,000 with the interest rate 10% per year. So it will become 10,000, double the value. After how much time? 70 divided by 10 will be 7 years. So now you have two examples as the practice for this section. Please answer question or example in slide number 10. From this importance of the growth, many economies want to find what are the reasons for the growth and what are the determinants of growth. There are many theories of economic growth, and here we focus on only 3 typical theories to find the determinants of growth. The first theory, stated by Adam Smith and Malthus. It was stated in 1776. It is in 18th century. And in this period, they find that Adam Smith and Malthus find that those countries conquer many colonies will have many resources from the colonies. For example, when England conquered the America, so they will get also the labor and natural resource from this colony, so they become richer. All the economy that has colonies become richer thanks to the natural resource and labor from the colony. So they conclude that natural resource and labor are the 2 main reasons or the 2 main determinants of growth in this period. After this period, in 19th century and so on, from the industrial renovation, machine and the development of equipment makes the productivity increase. And on the economy that has many of the machine and equipment increase their productivity and so become richer. In this period, America and Germany and Japan become the rich country thanks to the having machine. So John Maynard Keynes concludes that the physical capital means machine and factory and equipment of the production are the main determinant of growth. And after this period, the World War II damaged many factories in the world, but on the economy still survive and develop quickly. And Japan become a miracle of growth in this period. So the reason is that they focus on technology to increase the added value of the production. So when they have high added value, they will have high GDP as well. So the next theory is stated by neoclassical theory, and they say that technology are the main determinants of growth. So now, from the three theories, we go to conclusion that there are four determinants of growth. Firstly is natural resources. Second is labor. Third is physical capital. And the last one is technology. The number or the order of this determinant is not necessarily like this. Because the importance of these determinants are the same. But it differs from the source. For example, natural resources come from nature. Labor also come from natural activity of life. But physical capital come from production, not from nature. And technology also come from production. So if you can divide these determinants into two groups, we can have the policy, the suitable policy to encourage these determinants. So now we have the conclusion for the four determinants and more explanation for the four determinants will be explained in the textbook. So please read carefully this explanation to understand each determinant of growth from the textbook. So now when we see that growth is very important and there are four determinants of growth, we can, based on the determinant, to suggest some policy for economic growth. The first policy would be domestic saving and investment. From previous lecture, we understand that when we have domestic saving and investment, this investment is the purchase of capital goods. It means that firms will buy or purchase more machines or build more factories. So it will lead to higher physical capital, the first determinant of growth. Second policy is the investment from abroad. There are two types of investment: direct foreign investment and indirect foreign investment. These two types of investment is mentioned from previous lecture in the balance of payments. So now we have more explanation for the foreign direct investment and foreign indirect investment, which we call FDI or FII. The foreign direct investment means investment from foreign country, and the foreign company directly the foreign company directly establish the business in this economy. It's different from the indirect investment, the foreign indirect investment. In this case, the investment come from foreign country, and the business was run not by the foreigner. The business is run by domestic citizen or domestic company. Even they used the fund for investment from the foreign country. So that is why we call it indirect, foreign indirect investment. The first two policies related to investment will focus on the first determinants, physical capital, because investment means to buy or to purchase more capital for the economy. The next policy, education and training, focus on human resource or the quality of labor. The quality of labor. The next policy is the property and ownership protection. When we have the development or new technology, this must be protected. The ownership of the technology must be protected. So this policy will encourage the development of new technology, and also it also protect the physical capital. Number 5. Sorry, this should be number 5. Policy number 5 is free trade. Free trade is one of the reasons for Japan's growth in 1950s. Because as you know that Japan is poor in natural resource. They don't have much natural resource, but when they have free trade, they may import the raw material from other country and use the raw material to produce goods and services with high added value. So it helped Japan to increase the added value and then increase GDP. Policy number 6 is population control. When the economy have enough labor force, the human resource, they will have the labor force for the production. So if we don't have the population control and we have the aged population, so we will lose of the labor force and cannot increase the GDP over time. And the last policy, number 7, is the R&D activity. It means that research and development activity. The research and development activity will create the technology. And from the research, you will have new technology, and the new technology will increase growth for a long time. So now, slide number 18 is a practice for these two sections. What are the main determinants of growth in the following production process? So you may have to list on the determinants, the 4 determinants in each production. This one. And next, suggest the policy to promote the growth in the above production process. It means that we use the policy suggested here to focus on the production, and now is one of the explanation. The first production of vegetable and flowers. Slide number 19 give you one example to answer the first production. The capital needed for this production may be the glass house, or the net system, or the equipment, or the piping, or the watering system. Labor force and the human resource in this production is farmer. And remember that we do not list worker or do not list labor, because labor is the general determinant. But in the detail, you must list exact what kind of labor in this example. So for the production of vegetable and flower, we need to have farmers, not worker or not teacher. The natural resource is the resources come from nature. And for this production of vegetable and flower, we need to have soil and water, and also the light, the temperature, etc. And last, technology or technological knowledge. We need to use the farmer's experience in planting. What time to plant, what time for watering, etc. So this knowledge is called technological knowledge. The use of the knowledge or experience is called technological knowledge. And from these determinants, we may suggest the policy suitable for each of the determinants. Okay, so please finish the rest of this example for the rest for production. The production of aviation travel, the production of car, the education and training in university, and tourism. So this is the end for this lecture. The end of lecture 6, economic growth.